Welcome viewers to Historical Journeys. Out on the wide scope of Marker Mirror Lake, the team of an abandoned fishing vessel sit anticipating salvage. At last they pull up their anchor, yet find something startling connected the destruction of a wartime plane following 80 years submerged. This secret specialty is hauled to the surface, however, the riddle is nowhere near tackled. A long-lost World War II artifact, discovered in a lake, is providing new insight into the disappearances of 7 men. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It only takes a second, and you won't miss any of our future videos. Let's get started. It was crushed in the Second Great War. This brief English Sterling bomb sat at the lower part of Lake Mur, a lake close to Amsterdam, for a really long time. In any case, because of the quantity of airplane that were shot down over the Netherlands during the conflict, it was difficult to recognize this airplane. More than 300 years since the finish of the Second Great War, numerous families are as yet hanging tight for conclusion. It is interesting to note that the narrative began with a man named Johann Grace, who perished in World War I. He became interested in antiques as a teenager despite his upbringing in the Netherlands. In 2020, he was at a birthday celebration where my uncle was discussing the way that he found a daily existence coat at the accident site. I also thought it was amazing that he behaved like he was 16 years old. I therefore went to a location outside of Purmerend and asked the proprietor if he was aware of the match. He showed me the location. A lot of oil and fuel spilled onto the ground at the accident site. This captivated him, and soon his new leisure activity turned into his all-consuming purpose. However, it wasn't simply the actual remaining parts of the Second Great War that were so fascinating. He actually found planes intriguing, yet he started to consider what sort of individuals flew those planes. They have families and their side interests. They moved on from school. And I can't help thinking about how they gave everything for this work. Grace devotes herself to looking at World War I crash sites to see if anything remains as she gets older. It is craftsman run. We want to look at the remaining parts of the wartime airplane to decide its character. Deus and his group are committed to following the groups of warriors who have passed on in each contention zone. He has assisted numerous families with defeating many years of torment, misery, and conclusion. Over the long run, elegance fostered a standing as the main point of reference when destruction was found. Mr. Elegance distinguished the destruction as that of the Short Sterling, a 4-motor plane flown by England during the Second Great War. In particular, anglers had the option to recuperate part of the vehicle's underside from the profundities of Dutch Lake. All things considered, all records show that more than 600 of his Sterling aircraft were lost during the Second Great War. When a diver recovered a metal plate with a serial number from the marker, luckily Grace and his team were thrilled. Mirek really wanted to know the ship's identity. Effortlessness set up for the blurred plate to be shipped off neighboring Schiphol Air Terminal, where it was dissected by the police's criminological examination group. The results were back in no time at all. After an attack on Germany in 1943, the British bomber BK-710 was shot down, leaving behind its wreckage. Records indicate that on May 25, BK-710 left Lakenheath, Suffolk, England, just before midnight, and the adversary destroyed a significant portion of the town. The BK-710 was one of the fleet of 759 aircraft, including 113 Sterlings, tasked with leveling the German city, but in the end, only 100 buildings on the ground were destroyed. This subsequent operation, however, was not destined to be quite as successful. It set out for Dusseldorf, which is approximately 40 miles southwest of Dortmund. Obviously, the aircraft were blocked by weighty overcast cover, as well as fakes set by Germans to draw them askew. Sadly, the arrangement worked and 27 airplanes were lost during the doomed mission. Grace began searching for surviving relatives of the BK-710's crew, and eventually, a group of families joined together to petition the authorities to recover the wreck. Tragically, all 7 men on board died that day, leaving behind grieving wives and girlfriends. DutchNews.nl says that at the time, the state would only cover 70% of the costs of salvage, leaving local governments to pay the rest. While the families fought to raise the money, however, something different was occurring in the background at the wreck site. One of Beauty Jumpers had recuperated a cigarette case bearing the legend JNC, yet, as per the records, no one with those initials had been ready the BK710 when it crashed, and that wasn't all. Grace looked into the historical records once more out of curiosity, and within a short time, he found out that the BK710 was not the only short Sterling to crash into Markermer during World War I. Clearly, one more specialty, the BK716, had been killed only 2 months before the bungled mission to Dusseldorf. This time, the plane had left down a market in Norfolk, Britain on the night of Walk 29, part of an armada of 329 airplanes headed for Berlin. They were somewhat more successful this time, leveling almost 150 buildings in the German capital, but not all of the men returned from this risky mission. As per reports, however, when Elegance understands that the name of one of the aircraft's team matches the initials of the cigarette bundle, she starts to think, could this be the genuine indication of the trash found and distinguished? Grace revealed to the Dutch news network the wreck's serial number and the reason for the error upon closer inspection. Obviously, the more specialists look, the more clear the issue becomes. Understanding their error, the group started the unenviable undertaking of reaching the family members who were instrumental in recuperating BK710. I had first messaged them to say I made them disheartened news. Beauty made sense of. However, at that point acknowledged it wasn't something she could uncover via telephone or in an application talk. Obviously, this gave the group another mission: to find the family members of those missing on the subsequent plane. While looking through the chronicles, Elegance finds that a sum of 7 men vanished the night BK Flight 716 crashed. 5 of them were purportedly English individuals from the Imperial Flying Corps, and the leftover 2, pilot Harry Farrington and tail heavy armament specialist John Francis McCaw, were from Canada. As effortlessness dug further, the narratives of these lamentable men started to unfurl. DutchNews.nl reports that Farrington worked as a banker in the city of Niagara Falls prior to the war. However, when the conflict began, he enrolled as a pilot to fight for the Allies, despite having to leave behind his mother and sister. Farrington's sister told DutchNews.nl that she recalled her siblings' assurance. She claimed that the bank manager advised her that she did not need to leave because I was the only remaining person and her mother was a widow. The bank chief made a solid attempt to persuade Harry not to enroll, but rather Harry felt it was his obligation. Sadly, as it ended up, Farrington's abilities as a pilot came up short. In his last letter to his country, he kept in touch with his mom and sister that he had been to Germany a few times and dropped a few bombs for them. Tragically, Farrington at absolutely no point ever saw his family in the future. In the meantime, in Britain, comparable calls were gotten by the groups of other team individuals who for quite a long time didn't have the foggiest idea what happened that portentous evening. At last, very nearly 80 years after the fact, it seems as though Elegance can address the secret, yet it will not be simple. By constructing a dam to divert the water, rescue teams in the past were able to remove debris from the lake. All things considered, effortlessness and her group chose to bore the site and dig, carrying significant curios to the surface for investigation. North of 5 weeks, the group painstakingly investigated the destruction and painstakingly sorted out the riddle. On September 5, Dutch news site Ad.nl distributed an article affirming the personality of the plane for all. While examining the region, jumpers found a few parachute keys having a place with a BK716 team part. Their bodies. Adequately sure, reports Praed and her group ultimately found the assemblages of the team at the accident site. Presently, the names of the individuals who passed on BK716 have been added, so these 14 individuals are not neglected. The Dutch kids' book Not Wanda Real or Authentic Evenings has been distributed, a made-up record of a comparable episode, and has now been converted into English in line with family members of the departed. With his assistance, the BK716 and BK710 networks will be associated with years to come. Thanks for watching. If you want to stay updated with our latest videos, subscribing is the way to go. Just click that red button below and become a part of our channel family.